Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. My guest this week is the Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Dionisio. Minister, welcome again to A Closer Look.
Anthony, it's always wonderful to be on your show.
Listen, it's always wonderful to have you. I don't know about this time. It's such a wonderful time. We opened the borders July 1st. About 2 weeks ago, you had the chance to evaluate what's been happening. What's your feeling now? Did anything happen since then that you didn't expect?
So obviously we're in a completely different environment than we were pre-COVID. We are requiring all of our foreign visitors to enter the country with a COVID-19 test. And so this has meant that we've had to develop a technology infrastructure to allow persons to apply online, to upload their tests, for us to put in a process where every single test is screened, they're approved or not approved, and then they come into the country. So this is creating, as you can imagine, some growing pains. Persons are used to coming to the Bahamas, getting up that morning, jumping on a plane and flying into the country unhindered. And we have put in place, with the onset of this pandemic, this new process. And so there's, as I said, a learning curve. People are turning up to check in at airlines from the cities in which they're originating. They're not aware of it. They're not aware that you have to fill out this form. They're not aware that you have to upload this test. They're not aware of the type of test that you're requiring. So all of this is leading to some significant growing pains, educating our customers about what is now required to come into a country. Where, as I always say, we're trying to tread that fine line. We're opening the country, we're inviting you back into our beautiful country, but we want to ensure that you don't bring the coronavirus into our country and make our people sick. And so we're doing whatever we can to mitigate that.
Which means ramping up even more than you have already, your advertising and educational programs.
I mean, I don't think it is wise at this stage to pour a whole lot of money into advertising. Certainly want to keep the country front of mind. We want persons who have been locked up, curfews in their respective cities in the United States, who have this sort of fever of being locked in their homes and they want to come to a beautiful country. So yes, we want to get that information out, but we have to ensure that our protocols are in place and are working smoothly before we really ramp it up and go big time.
So education more than advertisement per se?
Well, you know, as I said, most people are used to coming to the Bahamas without any hindrance at all. We're a very open country. As you can imagine, entering the country is fairly easy. You come by air, you can go into the family islands, you can come by boat, yacht, private plane, all of these different modes of transportations and all of these different ports of entry make this a very complex country to run and to get right.
You know, as everybody knows, should know, one of the biggest concerns is we open the borders, we're going to be overwhelmed by all these people and we're going to be overwhelmed by infection from COVID. We boast about 7 million people coming here. The more people, the greater the incidence of that happening. That, of course, is accounted for in your preparations.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the Prime Minister articulated this in Parliament. We have to open our economy to get our people back to work. People have to be able to earn a living so that they can support themselves and their families. But if we open it too wide, too fast, then more and more people will pile into the country, and there is a possibility that we could have community spread. So we have to ensure that our protocols are in place, where we are testing as many people, or screening, I think is the correct word, screening as many people as possible to ensure that you have the correct test with the correct validity, that it's negative and it comes from an accredited lab, so that when we review it, you're cleared to come into the country. Now, I'm going to say this. We're not going to eliminate the problem. We're going to, as best as possible, mitigate the problem.
The majority of those 7 million people that we boast of, unless the dynamic changes drastically, majority of them are going to come through the port. You're working with the port for what they're going to do when they get that open up again?
So you're absolutely right, Ace. of the 7.2 million foreign visitors that came to this country last year, 5.4 million of them came here by cruise. And so that is obviously the greatest source of our foreign visitors. The cruise industry is, as you know, at a dead stop. And the CDC has said that will remain the state of affairs until the 1st of October. And then they will review again. So we have sufficient time to ensure that we have the necessary protocols in place. But I would imagine, Ace, that the cruise companies are probably going to have to come up with a protocol to ensure that people are tested before they go on a ship. Because if I'm going to take a cruise, there's two things that I'm worried about when I go on that cruise. One, I'm going to get infected. And two, I'm going to get stuck on that ship.
Yeah.
So they're going to have, I think, going to have to put in place some very robust protocols to calm the traveling public. That before I get on that ship, I'm not going to get sick. And if there's an outbreak, I'm going to be able to get off, because I don't want to go through what was clearly happening as we started this coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, because cruise ships were in the middle of it. And
Yeah.
speaking of the cruise ships in the port and downtown, what are you doing for the people who inhabit downtown normally? The straw vendors, the hair braiders, the cab drivers.
So obviously right now, with no tourists, Bay Street is a dead zone. And so there's really not much going on down there, given the fact that there are no cruise ships in place.
Likely probably not November, before at the earliest.
Well, if you speak to the cruise companies, they were telling me at the earliest September, now it's October, and at the latest Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
I'm going with that. And the Ministry of Tourism has put in place a very robust training program so that persons know how to operate in this new environment, to emphasize how you interact with customers, how you deal with social distancing, the wearing of masks, and all of the protocols that are being emphasized every single day of what is now necessary to operate in this new environment. So we're going to have to think through how you space people, because the straw market, for example, is very, very tight. How you distance taxi cab drivers, how you keep everybody apart and safe for when the foreign visitors come in. And obviously the cruise ships now want to know what our protocols are. They want a common protocol for the whole Caribbean. They don't want every destination to have a different set of rules. And then obviously they can have their protocols for when their passengers come off the ship, under what condition are they going to advise them or suggest to them certain excursions.
Yeah.
And so they're going to want to get a comfort level on, if you are the provider of an excursion, that you have all the necessary health protocols in place to ensure that their passengers don't in some way get infected because of going on your excursion.
Which also means, I would imagine, there's some coordination that has to happen for all the CARICOM countries now.
Yes, so there's been a committee formed that is co-headed by the President and CEO of Royal Caribbean and the Prime Minister of Barbados. And they put together all of the tourism leaders in the respective countries on this committee. And we're going to sit down, and which is quite difficult sometimes for Caribbean countries to have any agreement on anything throughout the whole region, but we're going to try and develop a common set of protocols so that if a cruise ship pulls into Kingston or Montego Bay or Nassau or Cayman or Turks and Caicos, there will be a common set of protocols which everybody will abide by.
Good. We'll talk some more about cruise ships, but we got to take a break, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold, speaking with Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Dionisio de Aguilar. Talking about cruise ships still, Grand Bahama, Carnival Cruise Lines. What's the state of that project today as we speak?
So we had two major projects in Grand Bahama. They were on the cusp of getting underway. So of course we had the Carnival project and we had the Royal Caribbean / ITM project. As you can imagine, Ace, the cruise companies are in a fight for survival.
Yeah.
And so they are, at this time, focused on their core business, which is getting their cruise ships back into the sailing mode. So the development of these destinations clearly is secondary to them. They got to get their cruise ships open, operating with new sets of protocols so that they can bring them to the destinations that they design. The one that seems to be still have a certain amount of traction, and we're still talking to them almost daily/weekly, is the Royal Caribbean project. That seems to be inching towards a conclusion. But as you can imagine, what a difference a couple of months make. At the beginning of March, we were so gung-ho about all these projects getting underway. Everything was looking significantly upbeat for Grand Bahama, and this pandemic on top of the hurricane have really changed the dynamic in that island. And so we are having to work doubly hard to ensure that these projects come to fruition.
And you say the one that's looking kind of like it's moving is the ITM
Royal Caribbean
RCL.
project, yes. So we're talking with them, as I say, daily/weekly, and waiting for the necessary approvals to be in place. Obviously, they want to do a port project and they want to buy the hotel. So
Right.
obviously they're working in conjunction. The selling of the hotel is a pretty straightforward process for us. That's moving along quite smartly. Obviously it has to be in conjunction with them negotiating a deal with Hutchinson on the port side, and that always has the twists and turns that it typically has when you deal with Hutchinson.
Yeah, because my question was, what's the situation with the Grand Lucayan? But that's all tied in with
Absolutely.
IT.
So what we're trying to do, obviously, there's the airport issue down in Grand Bahama. Hutchinson wants to exit running the airport. The government is negotiating its acquisition, and obviously
For $1?
for a nominal amount. The details will be revealed when the deal is done. I never like to corner myself by locking myself into a deal until the deal is sealed. But yes, Hutchinson is a willing seller. They want to get out, but we are willing to buy. But we would like them at the same time to conclude the deal with Royal Caribbean and ITM so we can have some traction in that area.
Talking about what we do, being innovative, you need some revenue. Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, she says, come stay with us for a year, come hang out on the sand. Most people think it's a wonderful idea. What are we doing in that regard in terms of innovation and innovative ideas that we can apply to the Bahamian tourism product?
So, I don't know if the Bahamian people will believe us, but the committee that the Prime Minister put together to stimulate our economy, given what's happening had also come up with that idea. And we think it's a great idea. And I think that the government of the Bahamas will move forward with allowing persons to come into the destination, to remain here for a short period of time, a year or so, and make this their home. And hopefully that will lead to a longer relationship. So it is, and we think we're far better positioned than Barbados to offer that. We're so close to the United
Right next
States.
door.
It's a short journey. We have many islands. We have a diverse product. No one can beat us at that game. But what Mia Mottley has done is really marketed it far better than we have. And so we have to, she's been all over the BBC. Everybody has seen it on WhatsApp. So she's done an incredible job of advising the world that Barbados is contemplating this idea, and the Bahamas has to now play catch up, even though we had that idea as well.
Speaking of new initiatives, and we definitely need some new sources of revenue. We always need revenue. How close are we to getting any remuneration, money, for our airspace?
So, this is something that we've talked about since independence. So here we are 47 years, I believe, into this, and still nothing. I like to explain to the Bahamian people our airspace like this. Assume it's a building. We own the building, but the building is managed by the Americans and the Cubans. And in the past, everybody who's come through our airspace, come into our building, has been paying the Americans and the Cubans, and we, as the owner of the building, have never received anything. So we're changing the relationship. We're saying that it's our building. You pay us, and we'll pay our managers. And we have completed our study. We hired a consulting group to advise us on how to charge, what type of aircraft to charge. There are always different ways. You go through our airspace, you go in and out of our airspace internationally. You make a domestic flight in our airspace. Do we do it by the size of the aircraft? All of these facets need to be studied and concluded on. And in addition to that, we have to figure out how to bill you and how to collect the money from you. So we have finished all of those studies. And then the final step, which is what we're entering into now, is consultation. So we now need to consult with the traveling people that use our airspace. This is what we think we're going to charge. This is what we want to charge. And ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization that sets up the guidelines for rollouts like this, tell you that that process must be a minimum of 6 months. So we've started that process now, beginning to consult with industry. The first step is to go to Cabinet and to get their approval on our new rate structure, and then we'll begin to consult with the traveling airlines, and then we will roll it out. I'm very confident, assuming everything goes well, in the first quarter of next year.
And I take it the Americans, who's really been managing it more than the Cubans, they have been amenable to what we've been proposing?
The Cubans manage 25% of our airspace, and the Americans manage 75% of our airspace, or of our building. We own the building. It's our building. So
True.
we should stop taking what I call the submissive role in this. This is our building. So we're going to charge what we're going to charge, and our managers will charge us a fee to manage our building. But we own the building.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to stop what I feel take a submissive role in this. This is our building. If you want to come into our building, this is what you got to pay, and then we will deal with our managers one-on-one.
Florida, next door. A lot of our visitors come from Florida, but one of the epicenters of this virus. Is there any likelihood at some point that you will say, we love you, but you can't come to the Bahamas right now?
So a very interesting question. 82% of our foreign visitors come from the United States. The 3 states from which we receive the most visitors are number 1, Florida, number 2, New York, number 3, Texas. So New York seemingly is under control, but number 1, Florida, and number 3, Texas are going through a significant surge. However, if we decide to say that persons coming from Florida are not allowed to come into the Bahamas, given the fact that most of our airlift transits through Florida, we might as well shut down the tourism sector. So what we have to do is we have to make our health protocols, if that is our desire, even more robust, even more stringent. But I think for us to close our borders to residents of Florida, we might as well close the tourism
Might as well
sector.
close the industry. Can ask you some more about the testing and the protocols, but we got to take this final break, and we'll be back with the Minister of Tourism on a closer look after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Dionisio de Aguilar. As we've gone on, testing, you continue to adjust the testing protocols. That is going to be something that is ongoing for a while, I would imagine.
Well, this is new to everybody.
Yeah.
This is a very fluid situation. And we've settled on the PCR test. We've settled on that it should be valid for 10 days. But if we feel that that is, in our minds, allowing people to slip in, we've settled on Bahamians being able to go to Florida and come back in under 72 hours without a test. And as we're seeing, that may prove to be a problem. So we're going to have to see how things go and adjust. You can't set a hard and fast rule on Monday, and if you recognize it's not working by Friday, you need to adjust. And that's what we've been doing, I think, along the way as we've seen what is working from what isn't working.
Yeah, and I know that you've been, as we worry about what's coming from the U.S., I know that you've been a proponent of domestic tourism. Talk about advertising, maybe that's a way to go.
So the Prime Minister has warned every Bahamian, please don't travel, stay home, and go and visit our family of islands or fellowship with your family in our islands. And so I think that the family islands were ideally set up for social distancing. It's low density, you've got a multitude of beautiful beaches, you've got large, wide open spaces. I couldn't think of a safer place on the planet to travel than to our islands. And I say to Bahamians, 7.2 million people come to our country every year to experience it. And yet we want to go over to Miami and get into a crowded mall and get on a crowded plane and go into a crowded hotel over there. No, think about it. How beautiful it is to go to our family of islands. And the Out Island Promotion Board has a promotion going every summer, and they're noticing a large uptick in it, particularly this year. Buy one ticket, get one free. And so we are encouraging you to go and visit your family, or go and just see how incredibly beautiful this country really is.
Our borders remain open. We're thinking the borders will remain open. But again, we're seeing a surge in lots of places in the United States. If there's this huge second wave, what will that mean for us? You talk about making adjustments.
One might argue that we're noticing an uptick in cases in our country.
Yes.
We're mostly driven by Bahamians who have returned back home, have gone into the communities, have led to a number of cases both in Grand Bahama and one or two cases here in Nassau. So it is a distinct possibility that the numbers will grow. And the government will have to think long and hard. I don't think anybody really wants another lockdown, another slew of 24-hour curfews. And I think that will probably be the position of last resort. But that's why it's so important that we observe all of the protocols that the government have put in place to ensure that we don't have community spread. So if you go away, make sure you have the right test. Make sure if they say that you are to go in quarantine, go in quarantine. Because if you don't, and what we found, people have not been disciplined and have come out of quarantine and infected their elder members of their family, infected their friends, and it becomes a major problem. And it makes it worse for all of us. This is going to be a community effort in order for us to allow for our impressive numbers to remain and for our country to be open. God forbid none of us want to go back to where we were in March and April. In many minds, that's unbearable. So we have to do whatever we possibly can to ensure that does not happen. And for the sake of our economy. We can't close and tourism shuts down again. How are we going to create employment? How are we going to make money? How are we going to keep people employed? So this is very important that we get this right.
Coronavirus, election year in the U.S., different ideologies warring over there. What do you think, what is your people at tourism telling you? The best you can imagine. 2021, July 2021, where do you see the Bahamian tourism industry being?
So there is not a country on the planet that is in the business of tourism that has not been impacted. I think when we looked, I think 100% of the countries on the planet that are in the tourism business have some sort of restrictions in place. So there's no doubt about it. Air travel is down, hotel occupancies are down, the number of tourists are traveling are down. And the psyche of traveling, everybody's saying, don't go on a plane, don't travel, don't go anywhere. So we expect the numbers to be down substantially. When will the tourism industry bounce back to where it was pre-COVID is anyone's guess. Some say a year, some say 18 months, some say 2 years. I'm probably at the further end of that. I think it's going to take a long time. Almost you have to wait for a vaccine, for when people get a comfort level, or even if you get coronavirus, there's some sort of cure. They may not stop you from getting the virus, but you're not going to die from it, like the flu, in many instances. So we're still quite some way off from that, and we have to prepare. We have to understand that our economy is going to be impacted by that. And so, I'm trying to temper expectations on when we can return to the feast of pre-2019 or early 2019, before Hurricane Dorian came and lashed us with its fury winds.
Yeah, and it could be a long time before we get to that.
Yeah.
As we come to the end of this, how is this going to change? How has it changed the tourism model? For example, we have these huge hotels. Is that what we want to do? Are we going to try to focus on boutique hotels? How much money, attention we going to pay to cruise ships, for example? How is the tourism model being adjusted and revamped?
So 75% of our foreign visitors come to Nassau. That's where the bread and butter of our tourism industry is. And we can pontificate all we want about large hotels, but we got 2 of them. Now you can't change that. Atlantis has got 3,000 plus rooms, and Bahama has 2,300 rooms. They're incredibly large employment generators. 7 or 8,000 over Atlantis, 5,000 at Bahama. So there's a huge amount of jobs, and of course the ancillary jobs that come off those 2 big hotels. So we just have to figure out how to operate in this new environment, given the inventory that we have. We can go on about the Family Islands and, of course, driving business to the Family Islands, but it makes up a proportionately small part of our GDP and a small part of our employment in the tourism sector. Important,
Yes.
but not nearly as significant as the hotels here. So we are hoping and praying that the operators of those hotels figure out how to operate those hotels and give the traveling public the comfort that when they go to those hotels, they will be able to enjoy all of the amenities that they have to offer in the safest possible way. So as it relates to cruise, the cruise industry's got a difficult task ahead of it. I mean, their whole business model was on packing them in as tight as possible and getting as many people as you can on a cruise ship to go to a particular destination. Well, that now has to be rethought. Everybody has to be moved away from each other. And I don't know how you get 3 to 4 to 5,000 people on a cruise ship and everybody socially distanced as you take advantage of their amenities, as you eat, so on, as you come off the ship. I mean, every day in the port of Nassau, 10,400 people were coming off a ship. And you can imagine at 9 a.m. in the morning, that's a lot of people, as we say in the vernacular, juke up and jam up, trying to get off the ship. So we all have to think of this new environment of distancing, wearing of masks, and at the same time encouraging people to travel. So it is a monumental and difficult task.
And of course, we wish you all the best in this big, huge job that you have. Thank you. And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can watch us also on YouTube and on Facebook.